Good evening and welcome to the July 20th, 2016 legislative session of the Town Board, and I'll officially call the meeting to order. I'll ask that everyone please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I'll ask our clerk to please call the roll.
Cole?
Here.
LaFountain?
Here.
Metzler? Here. Moore is absent. Quinn?
Here. Okay, thank you. The first order of business tonight is a public hearing, and I'll ask our clerk to please read the legal.
To allow the development of 11 residences in Phase 5 of the Abbington Place subdivision on 3.74 acres at 1229 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road. The legal notice was published in the Penfield Post on June 30th, 2016, and posted on the town's website and the town clerk bulletin board. 5 postcards were mailed.
Great, thank you. Mr. Horowitz, is this properly before the board?
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you very much. I see Mr. Neufeld in the audience. I would ask that you give us your name, address, and then start with your presentation, please.
My name is Rudy Neufeld. I work with Crosstown Construction, and I'd like to start by apologizing to the board for not being properly dressed. We had a little issue out in our newer community, and I just ran in and couldn't get changed, so I apologize for that. No disrespect meant. The development is the 5th section of Abbington Place. It's is going to be section 6 or 7, so it's either the second last or the third last piece. It butts up to Mr. Vendel's farm. Really are no outstanding issues. We had a few comments from the staff about the stub road and the proper timing of that, so they gave us comments. BME was at that meeting and they've duly noted those. The only other thing that did come up, and we were assured it was good, is we've added an additional building lot per the approval of the board, and they did look at the pond, and it was originally sized for far more than the 100 units that were originally planned, so there's far more capacity than needed for that. That was an issue we wanted to be sure was correct. And other than that, I would be happy to answer any questions the board has on the development. I know you're very familiar with it.
Okay. Do you have a map for the board by chance, Mr. Neufeld?
I don't, and BME had an issue too. Megan was supposed to be here and something. So I apologize for not being prepared.
All right. The board does have your packet, which does include a map in it, but obviously for the purpose of the audience and especially the viewing audience to have a map on the board. I'll open it up, board, for questions and comments to Mr. Neufeld.
Were there any remaining issues with the neighbors since we last discussed this at the work session?
Not that I know of. I know Mr. Vendel and I have spoken about his possible development. Really, they have no other neighbors. Our only neighbors are to the far northerly side, so the only nearest neighbors we would have are the community folks and that are in the Abbington Place subdivision.
And I do recall, just for the record, that when we were together last discussing this, I think there was a map up on there, and there were some neighbors who actually came in and spoke positively about the change of the building lot and the pond issue. I think that there was an issue, one neighbor was concerned about the pond, and clearly I think this addresses that concern from my recollection.
I believe so. I'm not familiar with that exact question. I can't remember it, but I believe that's the case.
There was the resident that complained about the mosquitoes in the pond and how the house, if it came down, that was next to it.
Oh, that's the Barclay.
That's the Barclay.
That's the
Yes,
Barclay.
that's the
Isn't that what you're
Barclay
thinking?
Park subdivision.
That's what I'm
Yep.
thinking
Yeah.
Paul's referring to. This is, we haven't talked about in a while. This is the extension of
This is the
Abbington,
extension
not
of
Barclay. We've been
Abbington,
talking
yeah.
about Barclay for the
Yeah, I
past.
think
Correct.
the building lot addition was fully vetted with residents, the
Yes.
neighbors there as well. There might have been a mention about a concern about the pond, but I don't think it was anything that needed to be changed, I recall.
So by way of record, the overall preliminary plans were approved by this board in May of 2011 is when the board approved that. And then this is the fifth section that we're moving forward on. It involves 11 lots, and it's on the southern part of the property that you own. As you indicated, you abut the Vendel property, which is further to the south of you. The PRC did, in fact, have a number of items. You did indicate the issue around extending the road and making sure that that was taken care of for potential future development further to the south on that. And I think that has been addressed, as I understand it, in talking with staff, that you've agreed to go through and extend the road and the utilities to the property line, if I'm not mistaken. A couple of other items on there talked about some grading, and I think those items have been addressed. As I'm looking at a summary of the comments on the grading plan, there was, as it related to a rear yard swale, should be a little bit more defined. And that was at the 489 contour, should be added for the clarity associated with that. I think that has been addressed. And then around a basin, again, for the grading plan to demonstrate more positive drainage for lot number 30. I think that has been taken care of. And then the tree clearing limit line be shown on the map, and I think staff and BME we're working on that item as well as the general area of disturbance through that. So I think based on the requests and requirements of staff and feedback that they have provided to us, I think we've identified all of those. And I think the last component that I noted was with regards to the erosion control and showing the location of that perimeter silt fence, and then the total area of disturbance, so that we made sure that any erosion control measures were taken care of and addressed from a runoff to adjacent properties. So I think those have been so noted on the plan and consistent with the discussion with town staff and our PRC. And then I think the one other minor item was with regards to landscaping and lighting, and just making sure that our landscape consultant's signature block was on for that review and sign off. So I think those are the items that in talking with staff and going through the PRC process were the items, again, for this final section, noting that the preliminary overall was done in May of 2011. Other discussion, board members, for Mr. Neufeld?
Not at this point.
No.
At this time, okay. Then I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address this particular item? And again, it's for Section 5 of Abbington Place. It's in 11 lots to their overall approved site plan that has been in and overall approved for the last 5 years. So they're continuing to build that out. Okay, seeing none, I would ask and recognize staff. Is there anything that should be entered into the record that we did not enter in to make this part of the overall record for this project? Okay. And I would say to the board, one last opportunity for any questions or comments for Mr. Neufeld. And then, Mr. Neufeld, any additional comments, input that you have that you feel is pertinent to this application that's not already part of the record?
No, I think we've covered it well. It's always a pleasure to work with this group, and the community's doing well. Our neighbors are excited about this. They're excited about Barclay Park. We're moving ground there, and hope to have a building up maybe early September. Some of our residents have some issues with hips and that, and they're already looking forward to possibly being in the next location where there's less maintenance. And so we're, as a community, excited about this in Barclay and moving forward. Thank you very much, Board.
Okay, thank you. So for next steps, The next time the board will take this up for discussion will be next Wednesday, the 27th, at a work session that will be on the agenda. If you'd like to attend, certainly welcome to do that, but not mandatory or necessary. And if you're not there or a representative is not there from your group, certainly staying in contact with Mr. Costello and finding out what that discussion was. Certainly you can also watch that on Penfield TV.
Thank you very
Okay.
much, Board.
Right, thank you.
Appreciate it very much.
I'll declare this public hearing officially closed. We'll move on to communications and announcements, and I'll start with our clerk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The 6th Annual Penfield Business Chamber Golf Tournament to benefit the Shepherd Home will be held this coming Monday, July 25th at Penfield Country Club. Registration remains open, and the cost is $150 per golfer. You may register online at www.penfieldbusiness.org or call the PBC at 348-8360.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Good evening, everyone. A few announcements. Penfield's Summer Concert Series at the Penfield Amphitheater is underway with Cool Jazz and Kids Fest concerts. This Saturday, July 23rd, Penfield Recreation's 60th birthday will be celebrated with a birthday bash at the amphitheater and Kiwanis stage. Bring the whole family and enjoy food at throwback prices. Everything is just $1, including hot dogs, Italian sausage, hamburgers, and beverages. Penrec will also serve free popcorn and slushies. Food is available beginning at 6 p.m., and Mike Cornrich will perform music from the 50s and 60s at 7 p.m. In the event of rain, this event will move to the Penfield Community Center. For the complete list of remaining concerts, please visit penfieldrec.org. Second, the town of Penfield, along with Parenting Village Community Organization, are once again teaming up to host the 4th annual Summer Bash held on July 31st from 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock at Penfield at Rothfuss Park. The Summer Bash is a way of creating a fun-filled opportunity for parents and children to connect to one another while simultaneously learning about the many wonderful family-related businesses and services that our community has to offer. For details and information about this event, please visit their website at www.ourparentingvillage.org. And third, the Town of Penfield's Employee Wellness Team would like to remind everyone that August is National Immunization Awareness Month. This is an annual observance held in August to highlight the importance of vaccination for people of all ages and to make sure they are up to date on the vaccines recommended for them. Communities have continued to use the month each year to raise awareness about the important role vaccines play in preventing serious, sometimes deadly diseases. National Immunization Awareness Month is sponsored by the National Public Health Information Coalition. For more information on the observance, visit www.nphic.org. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Missler?
I have just one announcement this evening. It's related to Public Works. It is construction season, as you may be aware, and the town of Penfield has received a cancellation notice regarding the July 22nd, this coming weekend, construction work on Route 441 eastbound at Linden Avenue. Due to the weather and temperature concerns, the work on Route 441 Linden Avenue intersection, scheduled for July 22nd through the 25th, has been canceled, and the associated closures and any detours will not be implemented. This work will be rescheduled for a later date, which has yet to be determined. The existing left lane closure on Route 441 eastbound will remain in place until approximately August 1st. New York State DOT is expected to complete the work on Route 441 eastbound on or about August 1st, and then switch over to a right lane closure westbound. This closure will begin approximately at Old Penfield Road and extend westward up to Linden Oaks and last for approximately 3 weeks. At the same time, the westbound ramps at Route 153 Panorama Trail will be closed for 2 weeks. Detours will be posted and marked, so be careful and make a note of the detours for that upcoming construction. That's all I have this evening.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Cole?
Okay, I have 2 announcements. The Penfield Players announces their 2016 Summer Readers Theater stage reading of Joe Orton's Loot on Saturday, July 30th at 2 p.m., held at the Penfield Community Center, 1985 Baird Road. This is a dark farce Admission is free, but donations are accepted. For more information about Penfield Players, please visit penfieldplayers.org. And my other announcement is that my August community chat will be Tuesday, August 16th at 5:30 at the library in the new book area, if you'd like to stop by.
Great, thank you very much. Move on to public participation. There are two opportunities, one at this time to address the board on any matter, and then again at the end of the meeting. You can do that one of three ways if you're here in the audience. You can also call in at 340-8771, or you can log on at penfield.org. And I would recognize our clerk. Is there anyone that signed up ahead of time to speak? And if not, don't rush to the table. We'll have an opportunity to get everyone that would like to be heard.
Craig Redman.
Welcome, Craig.
Hello, my name is Craig Redman. I live at 1720 Dublin Road. I imagine by my address, you'll know what I'm here to talk about. I moved out of the city of Rochester to raise a family. And I found this house on Dublin Road, which had everything that I grew up with. Grapes, dairy, cattle, chickens, and quiet. And I loved it. And I'm proud to call home and tell my old friends that I found the place exactly where I grew up, and nobody believes it. People that came out to see my house could not believe I had corn out back, grapes across the streets, and so close to every bank that I write a check to that I could almost walk and handle all my finances. And the quietness, the solitude, is one thing I love about that area. I read my kids' books, I help my son with his math, and you can hear the bicyclists go down the street. You can hear a person jog down the street. And outside of the occasional person who zips down that street at 60 to 70 miles an hour to cut off the big corner, I absolutely love that street. I love my house, I love my neighbors, and everybody around it fits in perfectly to the plan that I had to raise a family and two young kids. I got an 8-year-old boy and a 4-year-old daughter. And every story that I tell with pride about all the people I grew up with, not once did that story ever end with, oh, by the way, there's a bar at the end of my street. And whatever becomes of that up there, I'll tell you this. Living on that street, living in that little 5-stretch of house right there, I know that one day, if that bar is up there at that corner, where the driveway is in on the easement, there's going to be a major accident involving alcohol and speeding. And I don't want any part of that near my house, nor would I ever dream to raise a family near something like that. So if it does go through, I'll be looking for a new town. And I'll be embarrassed to say I left because I had everything here, but a bar at the end of my street. I'll bet everybody here doesn't live near a bar. That's not my ideal place to raise a family, where someone can go drink and leave at the top of a hill of a driveway that's going to be hidden by a fence and trees, and slam into somebody else who's doing 65 to 75 miles an hour up that street because they're just in a hurry. And I would love for the solitude to stay there. I would love for the quietness to stay there, no matter what hours they say they're going to shut down if they open up. It won't be the same. It doesn't belong there. And I'm really curious on who's going to win out here at the end of this matter. Is it going to be the majority, or is it going to be the money? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Craig. Our next speaker.
Kevin Gallagher.
I have some preparation to make. My name is Kevin Gallagher. I live at 1973 Dublin Road, Penfield. Good evening. My intent is a short presentation. I spent some time putting it together. If you have questions, please ask me before I move on to something else. First topic involves, well, all the topics involve the Oak and Apple proposal. The first thing that's come to mind is they have begun installing fences around the entire property, as far as we know, at 1381 Sweets Corner Road. According to the conservation easement with regard to fences, this is 3 farm operations, A, general provisions, 5 activities associated with farming, F. Repair or replace existing fences with fencing of a similar character and to build new fences that are reasonably necessary and appropriate for farming operations, provided that said fences do not interfere with the purpose and intent of this easement. Now, the town staff seems to be misinformed on this issue because, as far as I know, no action has been taken to prevent the fences. So these diagrams will be okay to use without the mic?
Well, yeah, is there a hand mic right underneath?
Let me try this.
Let's try this. You want to try that? We got one right here.
That might be the way to go.
That might be the way to go. You don't have to be a contortionist trying to talk into the mic and point to your, there you go.
The first example here is the apple orchard on Wickham Farm. I did a brief count. My estimate is there are 7,800 trees within a fenced area of 7.7 acres. Over on the other side of the street, Oak and Apple, they're proposing to fence in 27 acres for 500 trees. I don't consider this to be reasonable or necessary. If you do a calculation based on this format, 7,800 and 7.7 acres, it results in an area 1/2 of an acre. Now, these scales aren't accurate, they're not precise, but they are a representation of how much property they really need, necessary, to fence in to protect the apple trees. So this is 1/2 an acre compared to 7.7, compared to 27. So I believe it is unreasonable to fence that entire area. The fences, as far as we can tell, the fences violate several provisions of the easement, and it is a documented part of their development plan and their proposal, yet that proposal has not been approved. That concludes this portion. Location of the farmstead. This is a map, a general map of the property of the farmstead area. Correction, farm area. And I have to be clear about this. This is north, and you'll notice there are no roads for references. The reason there are no roads on the map is because it gives the false impression that this property is divided, when it is, by conservation easement, a single property. All the portions are considered part of the easement, and there are no amendments to the contract. Now, if there actually is a proposal for a farmstead, we will not agree to areas here in the orange because they are proximity to housing. It would adversely affect the character of their community. We would not accept a proposal within these areas, this area, large area specifically, and this hilltop, which is the most important part of the entire parcel. Now, just to define the areas that are shown on the map, these are cutout homesteads, which aren't part of the property. These are trees that exist, and anything not on the map is not part of the parcel.
So, Kevin, for the, I guess, just clarification, the three blue individual parcels or tags that you have there, again, what are those?
There are homesteads. They're not defined within the contract. They were excluded from the contract. So what they are essentially the places where people lived associated with the neighboring farms. So at one time, this parcel here was owned by the same property, by the same person as the rest of the property.
Okay. And then the other two?
Those, I believe, have been excluded from the ownership for many years, probably before the easement took place.
Okay.
Now, we understand that a proposal for a farmstead might be considered. So we would entertain a proposal that included any place outside of these areas. Now, that includes areas that are adjacent to the roads, which would be Sweets Corner here, and would be nestled in the other existing buildings. There are some over here, and there are some over here. So if there were a farmstead proposal, we would still want to fine-tune its location, but we would accept something outside of these other zones. Now, one of the co-owners of the property has proposed the location that is over here, and that is an unacceptable location. So, to be clear, there's areas that we would accept and we would not accept. And that process for approving the location of the farmstead is listed within easement, the conservation easement, under the farmstead. The ordinary process would be they present a location, and to be fair, other than we saying no, we are giving guidance as to what we would accept and what we would not accept. All right, different subtopic. I want to talk about the agreement that led to the conservation easement. Initially, 2002 or beforehand, consideration for open space was important to members of the town. And what came about is the town of Penfield proposed a referendum to allow for up to $10 million for purchase of open space and development rights. So when the voters passed that, that was an agreement that the town could negotiate for these rights. The town then negotiated with the property owner and the grantor, and they came up with a document that specifies the protections of the easement, which specifies protections for view sheds, scenic vistas, nature, and also respects that farming and agricultural production could continue. While these are not actual contracts, they are still agreements, but once the town and the property owner, grantor and grantee agreed to that contract, they made a promise to the members of the community that the land would be protected for the purposes stated in the contract and within the referendum. Now I want to talk about property rights. There is a hierarchy of powers, we'll call them powers. The idea of property rights predates the Constitution and is mentioned in common law. So the strength or the level of rights is akin to the Constitution. The Constitution helps define many of the rights and also helps protect the rights. Now, below the Constitution, there are laws, regulations, and guidelines and opinions. The laws can't violate the Constitution, neither can regulations, guidelines, or opinions. The contract between the town and the property owner has not been challenged on a constitutional level or a lawful issue. So as far as it stands, it appears to be constitutional and lawful. There are several laws mentioned within the conservation easement. Of the laws mentioned, the words wine, winery, cider, cidery are not mentioned. They're not mentioned in 301.11, which describes farm operations, not 305-A, and not 308. The right to farm is intended to prevent nuisance complaints from stopping sound farming, such as the noise of tractors, smell of decaying vegetables, the look of dead harvested crops, etc., from preventing farming. In this case, the right to farm means that they are allowed to do sound farming area activities. Now, the laws and the guidelines, which fall in this area here, do not equate a cidery to a winery. Those laws and guidelines do not create farmsteads. Only the easement can. The conservation easement did not create a clause that allows the override of the conservation easement. That means that the conservation easement with the rights here did not say, pointing over here, you may override these rights. These, as long as these do not conflict with the rights, then they're applicable. But in the case of a farmstead, it is not applicable. The rights are higher order. Okay, I have made a map, kind of an array of the distributed property rights. So there is a scale from no development over on this side all the way up to full development. Now, our understanding of the conservation easement is that we wanted to protect the property from things over on this side, commercial, industrial, residential. The idea of homesteads is actually in this residential area, and farmsteads, which are described in the conservation easement. Also described in the easement are farm areas, and these are some examples that I have provided: fields, vineyards, orchards, and pastures. Now, some of the buildings described in a farmstead include silos, greenhouses. Now, I've added some words that aren't in the easement because it says includes these, and these are in the same realm. It's not limited to just silos and greenhouses. It could be other support buildings. That is the definition of the farmsteads, and that's clearly described.
Kevin, what is that, that second symbol on the left?
This is a sawmill.
Thank you.
So I just tried to pick a few examples.
No, I just couldn't quite focus that detail, so
It's
thank
not
you.
a very good example.
Got it.
Barn, pretty good.
Yep, that I made out.
So-
That I made out, thank you.
I've included cidery and winery just on the list because these would be buildings that would fit into the description of a farmstead. Let's see. Now, I have provided, let me go back. So, the laws and guidelines do not and cannot override the contract. So, we're talking about ag and markets laws, and there is a reference which discusses the right to farm, but these are ag and markets guidelines. The guidelines talk about breweries, cideries, and wineries. They are there because it is their interpretation of what they believe the laws entail. They're not laws. I have provided some examples of the contracts for conservation easements. And I've pulled out the farmstead pages. And you have access to these documents. And the first three, Beardsley and Ruffus and Wilbert, they have no provisions to create a farmstead. This is an example of a conservation easement that only has farm areas, which are described elsewhere, farm area below, and then there is no provision to create a farmstead. So in the future, if any of these landowners propose things like silos or cideries or wineries in order to protect the conservation easement, you can say, no, that is not allowed. The fourth example is Bauman. If you look to the third paragraph, starting with notwithstanding, it says, notwithstanding the foregoing, it is acknowledged and agreed that the grantor does not desire to designate any portion of the property as a farmstead area. However, grantor reserves the one-time right to designate up to 5 acres as a farmstead area later. That is important as an example of the ability, the right to create a farmstead. So my example, I'm going to reuse this array of property rights. For that Bauman example, they have the rights to do farm area things and, of course, natural things, but they also have the one-time right to create a farmstead. And their right is not limited as to what designates a farmstead. It could be silos, greenhouses, winery or cidery, etc. The contract for 1381 and its surrounding properties, which includes all of these properties on this other map, only has one provision to create a farmstead. It is near the bottom of the large paragraph. The grantor reserves the right to designate a farmstead area for a winery. So they have the rights of farm area and the natural area and a single creation for a winery. That is their right. These are their rights associated with the property. All the other rights belong to the town of Penfield in accordance with the contract and agreement that they've made. It is my opinion that Oak and Apple purchased property with known existing limitations. It appears they are trying to take away our rights to protecting the property from development. Either that or they're trying to convince the town to give away those rights. They have no right to create a farmstead or a cidery. We have that right, and we have chosen not to develop the property. We choose to protect the property. We paid to protect the property, and both parties promised to protect the rights in the property. Please protect the conservation easement. If you have any questions, you can ask me now or you can ask me later. That is the extent of my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Got it. As Kevin is gathering his information, is there anyone else that signed up to speak?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that didn't sign up what would like to address the board on this or any matter? So, Jeff?
Good evening. Jeff Cady, 1728 Dublin Road. Oh, gonna need these. The Protect Dublin Hill Group, with over 300 signatures opposing this proposal, would like to thank the board members for tabling the proposed development at Suites and Dublin Roads to further understand why this commercial business does not meet the requirements of the conservation easements or the development rights. We must set a precedence on the development and protect these properties in Penfield. Two phrases have been made in this auditorium. One, just because you bought it does not mean you can do anything you want there in regards to property. Two, good faith. To begin installing a fence after the proposal was tabled and not yet been approved shows no good faith. Misleading statements from the engineers, the developers, and their attorneys have shown no good faith. Moving forward, in regards to the sewer laterals to service the 5 houses on Dublin Road at a cost, which it says in the engineer's report, the town of Penfield will pay for, over $50,000 for the 5 houses that 4 out of the 5 I know of won't be tying into those sewers. It's going to cost each of us, because we're lower than where the sewer is, we're going to need ejection pumps, site works, tie in off of our good, already working septic systems for what? And then we're going to have to pay on top of that a sewer tax. So the whole sewer benefiting us was just another throwing something at us thinking we were going to bite. Nobody's going to tie in that sewer. None of us want to. None of us can afford to. Well, speaking for myself, I can't afford to. That goes to that. I would just like to read a few sentences from the conservation easement under intent and purpose of grant. It says, this easement seeks to preserve and protect the scenic open space character and wildlife and plant habitation of the property, and uses of the property which are inconsistent with agricultural and other conservation purposes will be prevented or corrected. It is the intention of the grantor and the grantee to extinguish all development rights in the property by this easement. Also, just as long as I got the floor and we're all friends here, let's just, the DEC considers any apple byproducts industrial waste. A gentleman from the Monroe County Watershed said, any waste from the washing of apples would be needed to be addressed. There would be pesticides on those apples, not just dirt. And how that wastewater is handled is important. It cannot be dumped into a pond or drained into the ground or a ditch. If the wastewater will be drained into the sewer system, then the municipality should provide a permit and the DEC should be involved.
Jeff, was that the Monroe County Health Department?
Nope, that was the Monroe County Watershed. With the health department, the man who we spoke to works for the watershed.
Was it watershed or soil and water?
Watershed.
Watershed, okay.
That's who I got that stated that. One thing with Kevin, he says that we will allow certain areas, we won't allow certain areas. None of it. I don't care where they want it, what they want to do with it, where they want to put it, anywhere but Dublin Road and Sweets Corners. They can grow all the apples they want. I'll help them plant them. It's not ag and market. It's a commercial manufacturing facility with a bar disguised as ag and market. There's not enough apples to grow there for 500 gallons of cider. It's all smoke and mirrors. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff. Anyone else who would like to address the board on any matter, this matter or any other matter? Good, first-time speakers first. You know my rule, Kevin. Anyone to speak on? All right, seeing no one. Kevin, second time around.
Just a clarification and something that I missed. When I was talking about the areas that we would consider, it would be for a real winery, as stated in the contract, in the conservation easement. So we don't consider, well, maybe I should say, I don't consider a cidery to be allowed under the contract. The other part I left out is law regarding conservation easements, 49-0305. I'm jumping halfway down, and it says, no general law of the state which operates to defeat the enforcement of any interest in real property shall operate to defeat the enforcement of any conservation easement unless such general law expressly states the intent to defeat the enforcement of such easement or provides for the exercise of the power of eminent domain. So I believe it's clear that the laws respect the rights, the real property rights, that there's no law that's going to take away our right to protect the property. So I'll say the reference again, 49-0305. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, seeing one last opportunity, another opportunity at the end of the meeting, if anyone wants to stay around for that. Okay, we'll move on with our agenda. Are there any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to the minutes of June 1st, 2016. Would entertain a motion of approval for those minutes.
I move that the minutes of June 1st be approved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
4 ayes.
Okay. Petitions. Has the town board, town attorney, town clerk received any petitions since our last meeting? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to resolutions by function. We'll start with law and finance, please.
Authorization to assess the charges for the securing of an unsafe structure to the 2017 property tax bill.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas on December 16, 2015, the town board adopted a resolution to enact local law number 3 of 2015 entitled Local Law to Provide for the Codification of Local Laws, Ordinances, and Certain Resolutions of the Town of Penfield into a municipal code to be designated the Code of the Town of Penfield. And whereas the purpose of Chapter 97 of the code is to provide for the safety, health, protection, and general welfare of persons and properties in the town of Penfield by prohibiting unsafe structures, which include vacant buildings with unsecure exterior doors and windows which serve as an attractive nuisance for young children who may be injured therein, as well as a point of congregation by vagrants and transients. Whereas on June 6, 2016, the property located at 3286 Atlantic Avenue was inspected by the Penfield Code Enforcement Officer and found to contain a vacant structure with unsecured exterior doors and windows, and as such was determined to be unsafe. The owner of the property, after sufficient and reasonable notice, has failed to secure this unsafe structure. The Penfield Code Enforcement Officer has ordered and arranged for the necessary and proper securing of the structure by a qualified contractor. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Penfield authorizes the cost of the securing be charged to the 2017 property tax bill for the subject property at 3286 Atlantic Avenue.
Thank you. Discussion. This is the property at the corner of 250 and Atlantic Avenue, the gasoline service station that has been vacant for probably 30 years or more. And we've tried to have it torn down, and currently it's tied up in the local courts. So we're doing everything we can to make sure that it's safe, secure, and addressing that situation until such time as the courts finally realize it's time to take that building down. Seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
4 ayes. Authorization to accept standard workday report for elected and appointed officials.
Moved.
Second.
Be resolved that based on the logs kept by elected officials for 3 months, the New York State retirement will be credited for service time worked as per the attached form. Be it further resolved, as required by New York State and local employees' entire retirement system, the standard workday and reporting resolution for elected and appointed officials will be available to the public via the town's website and posted on the official signboard of the town for a minimum of 30 days after this resolution is adopted.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
4 ayes. Acceptance of lead agency status and issuance of a positive declaration of environmental significance of the action of considering amendments to the official zoning ordinance and zoning map, including the creation of a new mixed-use zoning district and rezoning 360 plus or minus acres currently zoned rural residential 1, rural agricultural 2, and limited business to mixed use, and accepting the mixed-use development manual, I'm sorry.
Moved.
Second.
Whereas the Penfield Town Board appointed a mixed-use committee to develop recommendations for a mixed-use zoning district and supporting documentation as proposed in its Unified Planning Work Program grant application offered by the Genesee Transportation Council. The creation of the proposed mixed-use zoning district and supporting documentation to the district were recommendations of the 2010 Town Comprehensive Plan. And whereas the Mixed-Use Committee completed its work and its recommendations were submitted to this town board for consideration. The town board subsequently held a public hearing on May 4th, 2016, to allow the public to comment on the proposed amendments to the official zoning ordinance and official map, including the creation of a new mixed-use zoning district and the acceptance of the mixed-use development manual, the action of the creation of the mixed-use zoning district, the adoption of amendments to the zoning ordinance and zoning map to support the district, and the acceptance of the mixed-use manual, anticipate growth and land use changes, and recommends additional regulations and guidelines to properly manage the growth and land use changes within the mixed-use district. Whereas the town of Penfield conducted a coordinated review and provided the Genesee Transportation Council, as the only other involved agency, the opportunity to accept lead agency status for this action. The Genesee Transportation Council has declined to accept lead agency status, so therefore the town board hereby declares itself as lead agency for the above action and has classified this action as a Type 1 action pursuant to the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act, or SEQR. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board as lead agency has determined that the proposed action may have a significant impact on the environment if adopted, and will prepare a positive declaration of significance and a draft scoping outline for preparation of a draft generic environmental impact statement, DGEIS, to address issues identified in the scoping process as set forth in sections 617.8 and 617.10 of the SEQR Act. Be it further resolved that this positive declaration and notice will be filed as required by law.
Thank you. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
4 ayes. Awarding a contract for the 2016 sidewalk construction program.
So moved.
Second.
Whereas the Penfield Town Board funds an annual sidewalk construction program promoting pedestrian accessibility and safety, and whereas sealed proposals were sought and duly advertised for the installation of new and repair of existing sidewalks within the town, on July 1st, 2016 at 11 a.m., the sealed proposals for the project were received, opened, and read publicly by the town clerk. The bid submitted by Heinz Concrete Incorporated was evaluated and found to be the lowest bidder for the specified improvements and has met the town's building requirements for this project. Now therefore be it resolved that the contract for the 2016 sidewalk construction is hereby awarded to Heinz Concrete on the unit price basis as submitted to the town of Penfield. And be it further resolved that the award is subject to the submission and approval of appropriate bonds and insurance, at which time the contractor is given notice to proceed on this contract.
Thank you. Discussion? See no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Cole?
Aye.
LaFountain?
Aye.
Metzler?
Aye.
Quinn?
Aye.
4 ayes.
That takes us through our resolutions. The next item on the agenda is old business. Any old business to come before the board this evening? Seeing none, is there any new business to come before the board this evening? And seeing none, This brings us to our second public participation. For anyone in the audience or at home, 340-8771, or at penfield.org to address the board on any matter. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on any matter? Okay. Seeing none and seeing no further business to come before the board this evening, the July 20th, 2016 Town Board Legislative Session stands adjourned at 7:57 p.m. Thank you for those that participated this evening. Thank you to Penfield TV.